Alright everybody, welcome back. Well, now that Dorothy's done, my next phase here is to get all the spare parts and everything that I've had either from the rebuild or from the black car rebuilt, get it on the shelf, get it cleaned up, ready to serve as a ready spare in case something goes wrong. So in this video, I'm going to take this nasty old caliper from the black car and turn it into one of these pretty calipers here. Stick around. So I got the calipers here from the black car, and I'm going to rebuild them. I don't have a rebuild kit yet because I don't know to what extent I'm going to need to rebuild. Obviously, I'm going to need to replace all the rubber seals and all of that kind of stuff. You can see that they're pretty brittle and falling apart here. What I'm not sure of is the condition of the pistons, but these are the older models from the Mark 1s and the Mark 2s, and you could just barely see there, 12 SP is the size of these. I believe starting with the Mark 3s, they went up in size, either 14 SP or 16 SP, I don't remember. What I'm going to go through is essentially a complete 100% teardown, including splitting of the calipers. And as I go through, I'll explain to you why I split the calipers on Dorothy and why I'm going to split these. So real quick, just a little bit of disassembly here. Get those safety pins out, or the retaining pins. All right, just a little can of simple green. I did not cut it at all. Just put the stuff in there. All right, next up, I'll get the bleed screws off. Those are 7/16. These are original bleed screws, so try to hold on to them. Using a flare wrench, again, just to protect the flares there. Not as important, I guess, with a bleed screw, but you got a little bit more concern on this stuff for not rounding off the edges. So that's the bleed screw. You can see the hole that's inside of there. Hopefully you can see that. And when you unscrew it just a little bit, you can see the end here has got a taper to it. When you unscrew it a little bit, that kind of unseats it. It almost is like a valve. Kind of unseats it and allows the fluid to flow through that hole and out this hole and make a mess if you want, or bleed the brakes or whatever you're trying to do there. Yeah, that one's going to need a little bit of penetrating oil. Alright, we'll let that sit for a little while. Alright, so here you've got the rubber seals. These, like I said, are all brittle and nasty and broken. I'll get those out of here. These are just essentially dust covers. They don't provide any liquid seal at all. The liquid seal is on the piston itself. When we get to that point, I'll show you that. Next up, what we'll do here is we'll try to get the pistons out. So I'm going to use compressed air to do this. What you can also do is use grease. Not as easy, but you essentially can set up a brake line, and instead of pumping air into this, you pump grease through the fitting here where the brake hose would connect. Not as easy because you fill up the fill up the caliper with grease, so you got to worry about cleaning all that stuff out. So I've got about 90 pounds or so on the air hose. And you should be able to see these two pistons come out. Now, if I remember from doing it, the two pistons will just barely come out of there together. So you have to kind of get one out and then work the other one. The problem with that is once you break the seal, obviously all the air is going to kind of blow by, so you got to kind of fudge it a little bit. So who knows, these calipers may be, or the pistons may be kind of seized in here. I'm just going to go pretty slow. Yeah, they're not looking too tight. Or they're looking pretty tight. Alright, well, that's not going well. A little adjustment here. Alright, well, I'm pressurizing the whole thing to about 100 pounds or so, and they're not moving. So, you do need the bleed screw in there for this, by the way, but what I'm going to do is just put some penetrating oil around there, cross my fingers, and let it sit for a little while, and hopefully come back here to it in about an hour or so and see if I can't get it. Alright, so I got it set up in the vise here because it's pretty tough to get it broken apart, and can't get the pistons out, they're still seized in there, so hopefully I'll be able to breaking these apart will give me a little bit of leverage. But it's 5/8, I think, 5/8 socket here, or 5/8 size bolt. So I'll go ahead and spin this off. All right, just regular old bolt. Probably pretty high strength is my guess. All right, you see that comes right apart. So, I'll show you the O-ring here. All right, right there's the O-ring. On the larger side, for lack of a better way to put it, you can see these the two halves. These landing sides are not the same size. So there's the O-ring right there. This one actually looks in pretty good shape. A little bit of gunk built up in there. Let's take a look. Yeah, a little bit of gunk in there. Just whatever that is. Alright, so there's the O-ring. Not a whole lot to it. Little guy. Compare that to the new ones. New one's a little thicker, but I would say that's a compression thing and the fact that it's 50 years old. But everything else looks pretty much the same. Yeah, it fits right in there with a little bit hanging over, which you would want to be able to compress. So, not too bad. So now that I got the halves apart, I'll see if I can come up with a way to try to get this piston out of here without destroying these lips here are pretty fragile. That's where the rubber boots go around. They're easy to crack. I don't want to do that. I did that in a couple spots, and we'll continue on. But the O-ring's still pretty pliable. Hold on to that. And try to get this piston out of here. So I put got the bleed screws in and got them tight so that they can hold the air. And this is where the fluid would flow. So I'm going to apply air here, smack on the back of the cavity for the piston, and I've got some propane that I'm ready to heat some stuff up if I can do that, and just see if I can get this guy to pop out. Now I've got about 60 pounds of air pressure here, so when it goes, it's going to shoot, and I don't want to be in front of it. So you just gotta watch that, obviously. But there's no movement at all right now on it. Maybe a little bit. So I'm just going to try a little bit of heat. Alright, starting to break free a little bit. Was definitely able to push it in there. Well, there it went. Tell you what, good thing it just missed that car, because that would have been a huge dent. Not smart, Fisher. Alright, so there's the piston. Actually, doesn't really look in half bad shape. A lot of corrosion and gunk in there though, inside. You can kind of see that. So important safety tip, if you're going to do this, obviously it is going to shoot out. I didn't think it'd be quite that dramatic. I should have thought that. But that would have put a big old dent in Dorothy there. All right, so there's definitely some roughness here. You can see that the probably, my guess is it was sitting like that, and that's where whatever the fluid was left in there collected and pulled up. But there is some flaking of the chrome here. So put it on the wheel, the brass wheel, real quick. See what it looks like after I clean it up. But there's one down, or one half down. All right, so that cleaned up pretty good. There's again some minor pitting in where the finish is worn off. So this is probably not really that good to use. Get the seal out here. Get it dried off in there and get the seal out. The seals are definitely shot. You can just feel that it's not very resilient anymore. You can see that it's all flaking away. But That's not to be unexpected. You can see if you can see that dark spot at the bottom, so that's for when there was fluid in there however many years ago. That's how it rested and corroded, which matched up with the slight discoloration, so that piston was in there like that. Otherwise, that chamber doesn't look too bad in there. There might be some areas of concern. That one's down, so now I'll go ahead and get the bleed screws out of this one and move on to another one. A little smarter this time. I got the piston inside of the vise, so I'm not sure that it's going to move far enough for it to loosen up, but it'll come out. Alright, well, unfortunately that's as far as it can go with it in the vise like this, but at least it's not popping out, huh? So I see which way I'm going to aim it here. So now what I've done is I put the sockets in here and they're sitting okay, and I'll do the same thing. I'm going to smack on it, hammer on it, and this piston will pop out in here and should hopefully be trapped by the vise so that it doesn't go flying. I'm not too crazy about having my hand in front of it, but alright, so now I can start to see the air come around the piston, so I know I'm getting close. It's starting to spray fluid and stuff around it. Getting some pitting on this piston. Clean it up, see what it looks like. Yeah, this one's got pretty good pitting on it right there. So definitely not going to reuse these. Close up of the internals of the brake caliper here. Bleed screws on this side, and you can see here's the supply line. This would be from your brake hose. So the fluid will come in, come up. There's a piston in here. That's what this thing represents here. This heavier black part, that's the seal. So the piston would sit in here, so the brake fluid comes in, sits right behind the piston, goes up, crosses over that little rubber seal. That's the seal that I'm going to replace when you split the pistons, or split the caliper, comes down, and then behind this disc, or excuse me, this piston. So when you pour brake fluid in here by pressing the brake pedal, more fluid comes in both sides, and you squeeze together the brake pads. So pretty straightforward, pretty simple. So the brake caliper's been sitting in here for a little while. I split it apart, just trying to get the last little bit of gunk off of it, all the rust and stuff that's in here. Get that cleaned up so I can do a really good inspection of this thing, and I'm really hoping that it'll be in good enough shape to use. So I'm just going to go ahead, get it cleaned up, get all this gunk out of here like I said, and then get it inspected. This half of the caliper is cleaned up as far as the gunk goes. The inside is not perfect. Use some 600 grit sandpaper to get in there, clean up the edges. I'm not as concerned with the condition of the inside of this chamber as I am with the piston, and I have brand new pistons. The concern would be that any pits or rust or anything like that as the piston moves in and out. If you have pits or rust or the piston is damaged, you'll start to slowly, right in this groove, if you can see that, goes a rubber seal, and you could start to tear up that rubber seal. Well, in here I don't have that concern because it's not a sealing surface like the piston is, so I'm not as bothered by this not being perfect. So as long as there's no obvious huge pits and stuff like that, it's good. So now I'm going to put this on the bench grinding wheel to get this cleaned up real nice, and then moved on to the other half. So they cleaned up pretty well, but not as good as I want. You can see how there's still some corrosion or dirt, whatever that is. It doesn't help that the metal is kind of textured. So what I'm going to do is I've got some simple green here. I'm going to cut it down and let these soak for a couple of days. The purple power, as I've mentioned, is caustic. So I've learned not to put anything in there and let it sit for more than overnight for something like this. This is steel, but aluminum, I don't even let it sit in that long because it will eat it up. Ask me how I know. But anyway, I'm confident with the simple green not being that way, so I'll cut it a little bit just to essentially cover these two brake caliper halves, and again let them sit for a couple days before I come back. I will use this VHT caliper paint that's just clear, no color, and that'll help it prevent it from rusting again after it's all cleaned up. Got the one half of the brake caliper as cleaned up as I could. It's not smooth metal, so it's hard to get into all the nooks and crannies, but it'll work. So now what I'm going to do is tape off the areas, the joints here, and then I'll tape off this ring as well. Show you a little trick, taping it off like this here, and you can kind of see the outline. What you can do is you take a hammer and just kind of tap on that, and what it'll do when you have a hard corner like that, it'll cut the tape for you, and you can just make your way around and hammer all the way around, and then you just peel the tape off, and you don't have to play with a razor knife or anything like that to try to get that off. Obviously you want to be careful doing that. You don't want to chip anything. I won't do it around this ring here because that's a recessed, that's a groove in there, and it's really easy to break these pieces off. So I don't want to do that. I have a couple of those spots on my existing calipers, but I'll go around and get this done. And again, I'm using that VHT caliper paint. See that? Pretty slick, and it's a nice, clean, sharp edge. Well, unfortunately, there's the pistons that the Roadster factory sent me. On the left here, you've got the proper one, and on the right, you can see that that's a little bit taller, about 1/4 inch, and that's not going to work. The interesting thing is it's the same exact diameter. It fits really well inside the caliper, so I don't know what other brakes used this. The Roadster factory did reach out to the manufacturer. God bless him, the Roadster factory has been in contact with me daily, giving me updates since I noticed this and got back to them. So they are definitely making good on it, and they're either going to have their manufacturer send them to me directly, or they're going to send them to me eventually. But really, until that's replaced, I'm kind of at all stop. So hopefully we'll get them soon. I'll get it turned around. All right, everybody, that's all I got. Thanks so much for watching. Leave a comment below. Tell me what you think. Well, the first phase is done. I've got the caliper all cleaned up, ready for the new guts to go inside of it. So as soon as I get those new pistons, the rebuild kit and all that kind of stuff, I'll get that in there and show you how that's done. Thanks again for watching. Have a good rest of your day. Stay safe. Cheers.